Greetings to all our attendees. Let's give it about one more minute while waiting for the others to come in, and then we'll begin the program. Thank you. All right, so it's 9:02. I'll hit record, and I'll begin with my brief intro.
Recording in progress.
Greetings to every one of you. I'd like to welcome you to today's program, ESG, DEI, Marriage Equality, and Human Rights in Japan. Today's program will run for 1 hour, and participants are welcome to pose questions using the Q&A chat box. Please remain online for the whole duration of the program and enter in your My Learning dashboard the verification code that will be displayed later to receive your New York MCLE credit. Without further ado, help me welcome the Japan Chapter Co-Chair of Nysba's International Section and Counsel at TMI Associates in Tokyo, Japan, Sugumichi Watanabe. Sugu?
Thank you, Kara. Hi, this is Sugu Watanabe. I am based in Tokyo. I and Azusa Saito of Nishimura and Asahi in New York are the co-chairs. I see that Azusa is on screen. I hope that all of the participants can see you. Hello, Azusa. How are you?
Hello, Sugu. I'm good, thank you. Hello to all.
Thank you very much. Just a short introduction so we can get to the meat of the program. As you know, as ESG, DEI, LGBTQ plus rights relating to that, and human rights are top issues that businesses and law firms need to address today. And we're going to have a lively and interesting presentation on various aspects of those topics. In addition to the Japan chapter, which is working with this group to put together today's presentation, of course, we have the international section, and for CLE credits, the Committee on Continuing Legal Education of Nysba, and also our co-sponsors are the LGBTQ law section and the Women in Law section of Nysba, and also the Lawyers for LGBT and Allies Network, known as LAN Japan, which is an independent group based in Japan. And with that, I will turn it over. Before I forget, there is going to be a in-person seminar in Tokyo on March 7, co-sponsored by the international section and the Tokyo Dai-Ni, the second bar association in Tokyo. And it will be various topics on recent developments in the US that may be of interest to an Asian audience. And with that, DL, please take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Sugu. My name is D.L. Morris. I am a commercial litigation partner with the law firm Hinshaw & Culbertson, based in both Chicago and New York. I also serve as one of the diversity chairs for the New York State Bar Association International Section. I'm excited to moderate today's or this evening, if you're on the U.S. side today, otherwise conversation. And I want to introduce our speakers. We're going to just reiterate that we'll take questions at the end. So please feel free to put your questions in the chat. But given the nature of many of our speakers and the breadth of content that we want to get through today, we won't really stop in between the presentations. But please take down notes, put it in the chat, and I'll be sure to try and check off as many following questions as possible. So without further ado, and in order of appearance by presentation, I will introduce our esteemed panel. First, Kentaro Toda is an attorney with the law firm TMI Associates, where his practice includes advising on global compliance matters such as antitrust and competition laws, international trade, business and human rights. He's also been selected as a next generation partner in the practice of antitrust in the Legal 500 Asia. Kentaro is also a graduate of Chuo Law School and obtained an LLM from Temple University Beasley School of Law. Next, we will have Daisuke Yamamoto, who is an attorney with the law firm O. Hibashi and Partners. Daisuke practices litigation and employment law. He also has many publications, including 2 2023 publications, one focusing on the Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry Transgender, as well as a diversity and inclusion publication on the status of LGBTQ+ in Japan. He is a graduate of Waseda Law School and obtained an LLM with specialization in law and sexuality at the University of California, Los Angeles. Last and certainly not least is Aki Tanaka, who is an attorney with the law firm Mori Hamada and Matsumoto, where her practice focuses on mergers and acquisitions and crisis management in business and human rights. Aki has publications including M&A rules in emerging Asian countries and the Anti-Bribery and Anti-Corruption Review. She is a graduate of Kyoto University School of Law and obtained an LLM from New York University School of Law. Without further ado, I will turn it over to Kentaro to start us off on his presentation.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Kentaro Toda. I'm a partner at the Japanese law firm called TMI Associates. And today, I would like to talk about the business and human rights in Japan. So please turn to the next slide. So today, in my presentation, I would like to talk about the current situation in Japan. In Japan, we don't have a legislation in relation to this business and human rights issues, but the government has been working in various aspects in relation to the business and human rights. So today I would like to briefly introduce what kind of things is going on in Japan. And second, I would like to present some of what kind of things the companies in Japan is doing and has been doing. Interestingly, the Japanese government has conducted a questionnaire survey a couple of years ago to find out what kind of things the companies are currently doing. So I think those kind of things would be very interesting information. So I would like to share those kind of things today. So please turn to the next slide. So first, I would like to talk about the current situation in Japan. As I mentioned, in Japan, currently we don't have legislation like in Europe, which requires the companies to conduct any human rights due diligence. But it doesn't mean that the Japanese government is not doing anything in relation to this area. In 2020, October, the Japanese government issued their national action plan. This was, I think, the second in Asian countries, following Thailand. In this national action plan, the Japanese government has pointed out the areas which they are going to work on, and also requested the companies to try to work on the human rights due diligence. But at this point in 2020, frankly speaking, this human rights due diligence or business and human rights issue was not that common among the Japanese companies at that time. So what the government sought to do is the questionnaire survey, which I have written on this slide. In 2021 November, the Japanese government publicized the results of the survey of what kind of efforts the Japanese company has been doing for the supply chain human rights due diligence. You can find the English and Japanese website in the link, which I have put it in the slide. So if you can check it later, I think you will be able to find out the results. But maybe in the latter half of my presentation, I would like to point out the main points of the results. And then 2 years ago now, it's 2022, September, the Japanese government has issued a guideline which would show what kind of things the companies in Japan could do for the human rights due diligence of the supply chain. The reason why this guideline was published is because as a result of the 2021's survey, there was lots of comments from the companies that they couldn't figure out, or that it was very difficult for the companies to know what kind of things they should do for the human rights due diligence. So in the results, there was comments that they would which the Japanese government would show a guide to what kind of things they should do, and requested to have some kind of guideline to do the human rights due diligence. So as a result of those surveys, the Japanese government discussed and issued this guideline in September 2022. Basically, this guideline is based on the UN guiding principle on business and human rights. So it's very, I think, a common understanding among globally, but it would explain at least what kind of things the companies should do for the human rights due diligence. You can also find the English version of this guideline in the link, which I have shown in the presentation. And even after this guideline, still some of the companies was having issue what kind of things they can do to conduct the human rights due diligence. So in 2023, last year, in April, the Japanese government publicized a supporting material for this human rights due diligence. What it is that those would be the materials which would help the companies to conduct this human rights due diligence for their supply chain. So the Japanese government hasn't issued any legislation in relation to this human rights due diligence, but they have requested the companies to, or solicited the companies to conduct human rights due diligence in the supply chain in their national action plan. And after that, the government has issued a guideline and also publicized some kind of supporting materials, and they're trying to facilitate the companies to do those kind of due diligences. So that's the current situation in Japan right now. And based on that, I would like to show what the company needs to do and how many companies, or how the Japanese companies are doing it right now. So as based on the UN guideline principle on business and human rights, what the company needs to do would be putting out a human rights policy, doing human rights due diligence, and implementing a remedy to help to prevent any harm to the or mitigate the adverse effect to the human rights. So first, as a human rights policy, usually the company needs to first draft a policy and get confirmation for their management and publicize it. Based on the 2021 survey, in Japan, it was about 70% of the companies which has been publicizing these human rights policies. The survey was in 2021, so it's already 3 years ago. So probably, in my kind of sense of the practice, I think this 70% has increased, maybe around 80 or so. It's because the last 2 or 3 years, I have been asked from many companies to help or advise them to how to implement these kind of human rights policies. So I think it was like around 70% at that time, but probably it should be increasing quite a lot right now. But that's kind of the situation in the human rights policies. But the human rights due diligence, the companies are having a very hard time to implement that to the companies. Because according to the data, the results of the survey, it seems like maybe only 50%, around 50% of the companies has been conducting this human rights due diligence. And even though the companies which is conducting the human rights due diligence in Japan, most of them are only conducting their headquarters due diligence only. And the companies which are able to conduct human rights due diligence to their direct suppliers was only around 50 to 60%. And if it goes to the tier 2 or indirect suppliers, it's going to decrease to like 25%. And for the companies which has been conducting the due diligence to the customers, it would be only like around 15% of the companies. So still in Japan, the Japanese company are kind of starting to do these kind of human rights due diligence, starting from their headquarters and trying to reach out to the suppliers right now. And for the remedy, I think it's more common for a Japanese company to have an internal reporting system, even before from these kind of human rights due diligence has been introduced. And but most of the companies in Japan has only opened up those internal reporting system to their company itself, and hasn't opened it up to the suppliers or customers or any stakeholders outside of the company. So I think the companies which is kind of trying to implement this kind of business and human rights policies or systems in the company, many companies are starting to open it up to the stakeholders, such as customers or suppliers, etc. Lastly, based on this survey, it shows clearly that the companies which has a high rate to implement these kind of systems, which I have been showing on this slide, based on the turnover, as it becomes, the company's turnover becomes larger and larger, the percentage of the companies which implementing these kind of human rights policies or human rights due diligence and remedies,
you've got mail,
increase. So probably for the Japanese company moving forward, it would be very important for maybe mid-size or small-size company, how they can implement these kind of systems to help this business and human rights issues, to solve these kind of issues. That would be my presentation for my area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kentaro. We're now going to turn to Daisuke for his presentation on the current LGBTQ+ status in Japan.
Thank you, DL. And hi, how are you? And it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for embracing me here today. And I'm going to explain the current status in Japan. And I'm Daisuke Yamamoto, working at Oebashi, Tokyo. And please advance the next. Please advance. Oh, thank you so much. And I graduated from the UCLA Law School 2021 with specialization with law and sexuality, which is a little bit unique. But yeah, today I'm gonna explain what's going on in Japan, and the main topic is the below. But yeah, what we need for now is still there's no legally same-sex marriage law, and also there's no specific protection of LGBTQ plus people against violence. So there are a lot more things to accomplish here, but let me focus on the recent big changes, big progress in Japan. And what we have done last year to this year is very, very giant. So one law was enacted in June 2023, which is for the promoting LGBTQ understanding in Japan. And also 2 transgender favorable decision by Supreme Court was made last year. And also 3 important legal fights for same-sex marriage legislative. So let me go ahead. Thank you. Could you advance it? Thank you. And first of all, there's the Act, June 23rd, 2023, was enacted. This is for the promotion of the LGBTQ understanding. And the Act is not legally binding, which means there's no legal duties to companies. However, the Act requires Japanese government to publish its policy annually meeting regularly, hold meetings regularly to promote LGBTQ plus understanding. And this is the second act about LGBTQ plus in Japan. One of the first law is enacted in 2003. That is the legal status change law. I'm gonna touch on the content later, but could you advance the slide to the next, please? Thank you. And there are 2 Supreme Court decisions regarding transgender. And the first of all, this is a public officer case, and then she is working for the Ministry of Economic Trade Industry, which is a trade authorities, and then she asked for using her gender identified toilet, which means female restrooms. However, the government refused it because she didn't take any surgery for the genital surgery, which is a requirement for the legal status change, official legal status change. I wanna touch on later, but it's a requirement for now in Japan. So she filed the case to the court, and then the conduct was made between 2011 to 2015, and she filed a case in 2019, and then the district courts and the high court and then Supreme Court decision was made last year, which says the restriction is illegal. And also the second one is very big one recently, and as I said, the first Japanese law regarding the transgender status requiring sterilization for official gender change on the family register, which means the public records. So if you want to take your gender identified sex on the passport, you need to change it, but you need sterilization. But the requirement declared to be unconstitutional by the court last year. And then I want to, for the 5 requirements of the law, I want to say the next page. Thank you. On the law requiring sterilization for the official gender change on the family register, which is unconstitutional last year, but there's 5 or 6 requirements on its law. And still we use gender identity disorder in the law itself. Of course I know ICD-11 and also the DSM-5 TO changed the word from the disorder to incongruence or the dysphoria, which is not the disease at all. But still we use such kind of word in this sense, in the surface. But yeah, if you want to change your legal status, gender status, you need to get medical diagnosis as gender incongruence by more than 2 qualified doctors. And also you need to be 18 or over 18 years of age, and you shouldn't get married because there's no same-sex marriage act in Japan. So if you change your gender after you get married, there's a same-sex marriage status in Japan, so which is not allowed here in Japan. And also you have no minor children, which is declared to be constitutional 2021 Supreme Court, but it's also a big problem. And then fourth requirement declared to be unconstitutional, and the requirement is that the person has no reproductive glands or whose reproductive glands have permanently lost functions, which means be permanently sterilized. And then 2019 Supreme Court says it's constitutional, but there's a big change of the result. I think the public opinion between this time is affected the result. I think there's a Tokyo Olympic, and also there's a G7 summit last year, and also the US ambassador urged Japan to accept something like that. So that's why I think. And also we have fifth requirement, which is also very controversial. You need to have a body which appears to have parts that resembles the genital organs of those of the opposite gender. This requirement is also ongoing at Hiroshima High Court, and I guess it will be unconstitutional as well. And advance, please. Thank you. And then, yeah, as I said, 3 important legal fights toward the marriage equality is now ongoing. And first of all, this is it. Same-sex marriage lawsuits, marriage equality lawsuits are ongoing. And there's 5 district courts decision, and 2 of them says it's unconstitutional, and 2 of them says almost unconstitutional. It's a very difficult terminology, but it is constitutional, but it's almost unconstitutional. And if it is left for a long time, it will be unconstitutional. And then 1 district court says it's constitutional. And also the following 2 coming up decision will be made March 14th this year, and the Sapporo High Court and also Tokyo District Court's second group of plaintiffs will release. So yeah, we need to check the result. And also second one is Supreme Court is likely to rule that same-sex couples survivor is entitled to crime survivors benefit. And then the decision will be made on March 5th this year. And the Nagoya High Court says it's constitutional not to allow same-sex couples survivors to get the crime survivors benefit, which is the law, which is stipulated by the law. But yeah, it will be changed because the Supreme Court will hold a court hearing case, which is a kind of requirement to change the High Court decision result. So that's why we assume that that result will be changed. And also third one is Japan grants designated activity visas to US men legally married to a Japanese man in the United States. And as you might know, the designated activities visa is still has still limitation to the working condition or something like that. But yeah, if you legally married in the United States with Japanese man or Japanese female as a same-sex marriage, even though Japan does not allow same-sex marriage act, but you will get a visa in some comment. Hey, could you advance, please? Thank you. The last slide is the additional comment. there are a big increase in the number of companies supporting the marriage equality, which is almost 500 companies show their support to marriage equality. And also, I have to say that Japanese law does not explicitly prohibit discrimination on sexual orientation and gender identity. Especially for the employment dismissal case, but it won't allow employers to dismiss employees without reasonable grounds on the labor law. So I think if the employers terminate the contract only based on the gender identity or sexual orientation, it will be void. So that's it. That's a very compact one. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Daisuke. Now we will have Aki presenting on diversity and inclusion at Japanese law firms.
Yes, so good evening, everyone. I am Aki Tanaka, a counselor at Mori Hamada and Matsumoto. And Mori Hamada and Matsumoto is a law firm born in Japan, but now our operation is expanded to multiple countries. So today, I would like to explain D&I initiatives in Japanese law firms, taking our firm as an example. As I have 30 minutes only, I will quickly go through the topics shown in my slides. Next slide, please. So at first, I explain the current situation of D&I initiatives in Japanese bar community. So generally speaking, in my view, when it comes to D&I initiatives, business enterprises community is going ahead of bar community in Japan, but we are also proceeding with our own initiatives. So Japan Federation of Bar Associations, which is an organization of all the lawyers in Japan need to belong to, set up a working group to promote D&I in the Japanese legal community. So far, they held a symposium event and they conducted an online survey. And we also have 52 local bar associations in Japan, and some of them also do some D&I related activities. And law firms also started their own D&I initiatives. And some lawyers groups organize their own activities outside of their law firms and bar associations. Next slide, please. So from this slide, please let me explain what law firms in Japan are doing, taking our law firm, Mori Hamada and Matsumoto, is doing as an example. So in 2020, we published our diversity and inclusion policy, and I will not read out the entire text, but from this text, I hope you will see what value we believe in. And at that time, we had approximately 1,200 people among domestic and overseas offices. So they are diversified in multiple contexts, so gender, ethnicity, health condition, etc. So this drove us to promote our D&I activities, and we set this policy. So next slide, please. Next slide, please. And to promote our D&I activities, we set up a D&I task force. This task force is a group of our members, which consists of 11 lawyers and 1 staff. I joined this task force in 2020, immediately after we published our D&I policy. And at that time, the members were 6 or 7 lawyers only, but after that, we increased the members. And inside our firm, we publicly recruited 1 staff specializing in D&I task force activities. So this expanded what we can do. And this task force key role is to find issues from D&I perspective and share such issues with appropriate internal departments or committees in our firm, and think together how to deal with such issues. Next slide, please. So from this slide, please let me briefly touch upon what our firm is doing from D&I perspective. This is one example. So our firm has a series of initiatives for lawyers raising children called the Family Support Program. In Japan, in many cases, associate lawyers are not employees of the law firm, and they are not entitled to maternity leave, etc., under the employment laws in Japan. But nonetheless, to support young lawyers with children, we prepared a package of support programs, such as maternity leave and parental leave, and multiple working hours systems. And we also assign mental lawyers who can give advice for such lawyers taking leaves to raise children. And this support program was reviewed and revised from time to time. And in 2021, the program became the current one. And since 2021, 88% of male lawyers who had newborn babies have taken parental leave. Next slide, please. And as a part of our family support program, our firm provides some subsidy for babysitter and child care services. For lawyers raising children in the early years of elementary school, our firm subsidizes 2/3 of the actual cost, and our firm also provides one-time payment subsidy for such lawyers as well. Next slide, please. Our firm also does some activities from a sexual orientation and gender identity perspective. For example, in our employment regulations applicable to staff, same-sex couples are treated in the same manner as married couples. For example, in our employment regulation, when a couple raised an adopted child, parental leave was entitled, and in 2021, we amended this rule to clarify that this couple includes same-sex couples, though Japanese law still does not have same-sex marriage system. So another example is that transgender person may use a different name from the registered name. And our firm also does some LGBTQ+ related activities. Every June, we do MHM Pride and hold a series of events such as distribution of goods or inviting specialists to hold lectures for us. And as another example, we have endorsed American Chamber of Commerce in Japan's initiatives to support same-sex marriage. As a result of these series of the activities, we received gold in the Pride Index from the organization promoting LGBTQ+ diversity in workplaces. Next slide, please. So another example is cultural diversity activities. So we have members with different cultural backgrounds, and we are seeking how to improve our working environment respecting such background. So as the current task force members are all with Japanese cultural background, we first did online survey for our Tokyo office to find what are the issues. And after that, we took some activities. For example, we shared a list of the prayer rooms and restaurants with halal vegan menus close to our Tokyo office. And the number of multi-language internal announcement was also increased. As a separate initiative, we hold regional meeting for lawyers from multiple Southeast Asia offices. And this is a good opportunity for lawyers to understand the cultural background of each other. And we are doing some activities for D&I in the health condition, so we are increasing the number of staff with disabilities. Next slide, please. So we have other initiatives as well. So internal lectures for the first year lawyers. Or to find D&I related issues in our firm, our task force does online survey as well. So we conducted our online survey for unconscious bias among the workplace, and we did an internal lecture for senior associate lawyers last year. And in our internal portal website, we created D&I Cafe. So this is called Cafe, but this is an online bulletin board on which people may freely post D&I related news, opinions, etc. And D&I suggestion box to receive suggestions. We created this suggestion box as well. So for this suggestion box, anonymous suggestions are also available. And we hold D&I meetup from time to time for minority groups of our firms, such as female lawyers or mid-career hired lawyers or foreign lawyers. So for their internal networking, as well as so that task force can receive some suggestions. Next slide, please. So I explained our activities and achievements, but in this slide, I would like to share our struggles as well. To do D&I activities, in my view, roughly speaking, we face two difficulties shown on the slides. So one is the lack of the awareness, and the other is the lack of the resources. So when it comes to the lack of resources, for example, We understand that some companies in Japan have their own prayer rooms inside their office for people who pray. But at least in our Tokyo office, it is tough to find a place to create an independent prayer room. So we are now discussing alternatives to secure the opportunity for play. And we are increasing our staff with disabilities, but it's a difficult question to find work suitable and available for such staff with disabilities. So considering the traditional law firm's work, it is not easy to allocate such works to people with disabilities. But we are now breaking down such works into pieces and see whether what work is suitable to to whom, considering each person's disability. And I do not participate in person, but there is a periodical meeting among law firms discussing D&I issues, and inclusion of people with disabilities is always a hot topic. The next struggle is the lack of awareness. So we receive not only suggestions, but also complaints through our D&I suggestion box. And in my view, many of such complaints stem from lack of awareness for lifestyle diversity, working environment diversity. So more than 3 years have passed since we published our D&I policy, but I feel that to change the mind of members, it takes more time. So we are tackling against these difficulties now, and through today's event, I hope I can get some new ideas for how to deal with this. So I finished my presentation here, and many thanks for taking time for hear this. And Kara-san, thank you for turning the slides. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aki. Now we're just going to do a very brief overview of the state of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the United States before we get back to our panelists with some questions from the audience and those posed in advance. Next slide. In the United States, we look at diversity in a very complex way. We look at it as both those factors above the line, if you will, of visibility and below the line. It is the characteristics and individual attributes that make up persons, and it is not just color or gender that you might see, if you will, above the line, but all sorts of socioeconomic backgrounds, sexuality, veteran status, or marital or parental status that also contribute to the persons that we are in the individual ways that we show up at our workplaces. Next slide. Equity is defined as the fairness and understanding the differing needs between people, and it's distinct from equality because in the example given on the screen, just giving each of the fans the same size box, if the goal was to allow them each to see the game, didn't accomplish the purpose when the fans are of different heights, but giving them appropriate or equitable size boxes did accomplish that goal. So understanding equity is a differentiation between people as appropriate to accomplish your goal. Lastly, and inclusion focuses on belonging, and to what extent are you making room to see the folks that should be in the room and giving them opportunity, next slide, Kara, and giving them opportunities to participate in the activities that are going on. I like the example during the Obama presidency where many of the women advisors would be sure to amplify each other's ideas to ensure that they were heard and given credit. So inclusion, again, is defined as how we ensure that people feel that they belong to a group. Next slide. As attorneys in the United States, we have an ethical duty under the Model Rules of Professional Conduct, Rule 8.4G, that actually prohibits discrimination. It's misconduct for a lawyer to engage in behavior that they know is harassment or discrimination on the basis of a number of protected categories, including race, sex, religion, national origin, ethnicity, disability, age, sexual orientation, gender identity, marital status, or socioeconomic status and conduct related to the practice of law. And many states have also added on to these sorts of descriptions. Next slide. In June 2023, a recent U.S. Supreme Court decision entitled Students for Fair Admissions versus Harvard did rule that race-based admissions was unconstitutional if the policy in place by the schools of admission was focused on giving certain points or credits to different applicants solely on the basis of their race, then the U.S. Supreme Court saw it to be unconstitutional, finding there to really be no logical endpoint to trying to achieve some meaningful representation or meaningful diversity when you are pretty much based on your admissions decisions are based on a sort of point or quota system, if you will. Next slide. Following the Supreme Court's decision, activists who really brought the initial case continued his advance in other initiatives against law firms and legal industry companies that offered diversity programs. Many at the time suggested that that was the end, the litigation, if you will, in Harvard marked the end of diversity in the United States. And I'm happy to say that it certainly hasn't, because what we've seen is, despite many different lawsuits being filed, in particular one against the law firm Winston & Strawn, it was dismissed after further revisions and amplification of the programs that was being offered by the law firm made clear that all applicants were allowed and invited to apply for the diversity program. Some of the other law firm lawsuits that are still pending, including one involving Fearless Fund, challenging a $20,000 grant program offered to Black female venture capital businesses, did experience a denial of the TRO, temporary restraining order, that was sought, and it is pending appeal. Ultimately, go on to the next slide. The initiatives that the U.S. has really found to meaningfully advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in a way that is inclusive of all those interested in advancing similar values really comes down to the ABA Resolution 113, which is a signatory by a number of law firms and legal departments to find a way to encourage diversity in the legal industry. And one that I'll share briefly our firm has participated in is the Mansfield Rule, facilitated by Diversity Lab, where participating law firms are encouraged to consider at least 30% diverse slate of candidates in hiring, promotions, and leadership positions. And by way of example, over the 3 years that our firm has implemented that program, we've seen our senior management team increase its diversity representation from about 44% 3 years ago to now 56% in our current iteration. The work ahead continues, and we encourage our community to consider how mindfulness is implicated in understanding how we each play an impact on the ecosystems that we live and work in, and must work together to advance our respective interests in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And now I will turn it back over to our panelists and begin to take some of the questions on the online. I want to start with Kentaro. During your presentation on human rights, my question is, how does a company prioritize the different aspects of their human rights policy? Is that taken by social media? Is it taken by the workforce? What would you say?
So I think so. What impacts does that have, right? So I think it really changes the working environment of the company based on these kind of policies, because I think, especially in many cases in the Japanese companies, the main point which would be pointed out would be in relation to working environment and also foreign workers in the companies. So I think that would be one point which would impact. I think you're on mute.
Thank you for that. A follow-up question we received: should there be greater transparency offered to stakeholders, and why?
Yes. So I think the transparency would be very important for the stakeholders, because even though you have done those kind of human rights due diligence and try to keep up these kind of works in the company, you have to kind of be transparent and open it up to the public. What kind of things you are doing would also have good effect to your employees and the stakeholders to know what kind of efforts you have been doing. So I think the transparency would be very important.
Thank you. And Daisuke, turning to your presentation for a moment, it took several years for a decision to come in the reverse sterilization decision. How does changing perhaps public policy views also contribute to the evolution of the Supreme Court and how they review some of the cases that are currently pending as it relates to LGBTQ plus rights?
Oh, you mean the biggest contribution factor behind the change?
Correct.
Between the, yeah. Yeah, I think, yeah, as I referred in the case, in my presentation, I think the public opinion is the biggest contribution on the case because, yeah, of course, the cabinet elected the Supreme Court judges. So, and our, how I say, the leading political party has not been changing in these years. However, the Supreme Court judges from ex-judge or the ex-diplomats or some other ex-lawyers or something like that, and they are affected by the public opinion, of course. So social, how is it, pressure, peer pressure has come to the and in the end, and also that even in 2019, two judges at the Supreme Court declares in their dissent it should be unconstitutional, and then yeah, the movement is coming up with the pressure of the public opinion, I guess.
So did I hear you correctly that there's been even changes to the judiciary that new members to the bench are also contributing to perhaps a continued growth in perspective with the upcoming opinions? Is that correct?
Yes, I think so. But we have 15 judges in the Supreme Court, not 9 judges. So each one has a little power compared to the United States. But however, yeah, I think they are very keen to the social pressure, social opinion. So yeah, that might affect.
Oh, thank you. Aki, you talked about the paternity leave policy and how that was recently provided to employees, and it saw about an 88%, if I recall the statistic you shared, 88% of males employees taking advantage of the paternity leave policy when appropriate. Was there any polling or employee engagement beforehand to kind of learn and realize that was an interest, that was a benefit that your male employees would be interested in and certainly would be interested in to take advantage of it?
So when this program was reviewed, I was not in the task force, so I do not have the detailed information, but I hope there was some initiative to collect the information, and there is a need that. And I think that the outbreak of the COVID-19 also affected this phenomena, since traditionally when ladies birth to children in Japan, they tend to go back to their old family. So their parents may take care of their wife and the newborn baby, but due to the COVID-19 outbreak, Japanese people tend to stop that custom. So this in my view, this may affect the significant increase of the paternity leave taken by male lawyers.
Thank you. I wanted to stay with you for another question, Aki, and just as a follow-up to the discussion on the suggestion box, did you find that helped to perhaps decrease stigma on any uncomfortable questions that folks would pose? How did you find the most effective way to implement the recommendations that would come through the suggestion box?
So could you please repeat your question? So the suggestion box on our website, right?
Correct. How did you best implement the recommendations that came through the suggestion box?
So the one to implement the suggestions made through the suggestion box. So some suggestions are made anonymous, so we cannot directly engage with the person who posted the suggestion box. So task force will read the suggestion, and the task force itself does not have the authority to make decision to change for example, internal rules. So we liaise with the appropriate internal department and discuss how to implement, for example, how to change the internal rules or something like that.
Thank you. Thank you. Daisuke, I'll pose this question to you from the chat. Do you see more diversity in leadership positions also growing in law firms in Japan?
The answer is no, I guess. There's no diversity officers in the law firm for now, I think. Yeah, of course, as you might know, JAL accepts the first female CEO for the first time in the history, but Japanese law firm is far behind from the Japanese companies as well. It's like 10 years behind or 20 years behind. So we need another kind of the opportunities for the diversity and inclusion officers, as well as the diversity and inclusion program, which is also not applicable to the Japanese law firm as well. There's no intern from such kind of the funding. So, yeah, what we need.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And we'll pose the last question to Kentaro before I turn it over to Sugu to close us out. Kentaro, have you seen generational differences impact some of the prioritization of human rights issues addressed by companies in Japan?
I don't see generation differences because this is relatively a new topic for the Japanese companies. So I think regardless of the generation, I think all the companies are struggling how they can meet this requirement. And maybe rather it's more younger generation would be more active in this kind of areas because they're more like interested in new issues and topics. So maybe that's kind of the situation right now in Japan.
I want to thank our panelists Kentaro, Daisuke, and Aki, and turn it over to Sugu for any closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. That was a very interesting interaction, description of various aspects of DEI and related issues in Japan. I just wanted to thank our speakers and also particularly our moderator, D.L. Morris, for helping us discuss these issues. Final reminder, the next Japan chapter event is a co-sponsored in-person seminar with the Niben Bar Association in Tokyo on March 7th. And with that, Kara, did you have any final words?
Yes. So before we end, I'd like to announce the MCLE verification code. It's the letter J. J as in Japan, J as in justice, or J as in judicial. Again, the verification code is the letter J. Please enter the code in your My Learning dashboard in your Nysba account to receive your MCLE credit. And if there's nothing else, I'd like to thank everyone again, and thank you for choosing your State Bar Association programs, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Recording stopped.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night, or have a great day.
Have a great Thursday, I believe, on your side of the pond. Have a great one. Thank you again. Well done, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Great presentation. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.